Well, good morning, everybody. Hope you're all well. Wow, look at this. There are hundreds of you. Well, I don't know about hundreds, but certainly there's a lot of you guys out there this morning. Well, for me, it's the morning. It's a beautiful morning here in Sydney, and I'm really excited about today. Uh, if you wouldn't mind just raising your hand, just let me, if you can hear me, just raise your hand so I know that I'm coming through loud and clear. My voice might be a bit fuzzy. Great. Thank you. Okay. Mary, thank you. John, thank you. Aaron, thank you. Yeah, that's great. Brian, Michelle, okay, coming through loud and clear. Beautiful. So, yeah, well, welcome this morning. It's going to be a really full-on web clinic. Can I just welcome all you international sales leaders? Some of you have woken up really early in the morning. Some of you haven't gone to bed yet. For us here in Sydney, it's around about 8 o'clock in the morning. And so welcome to those of you from Canada. I can see a number of you, and from the UK and US, and from India. Welcome. And welcome to our Mauritian sales leader. Lovely to have you on board. South Africa, thank you. Anyway, so without any more ado, I just want to dive in and share with you what is hopefully going to be a worthwhile investment of your time and effort for being here. So let me start out today, and I'm just going to get myself organized here. I thought I was. I'll move my mouse. Okay, so here's what we're going to be covering today. Now, let me just say that it's going to be 90 minutes. So we're going to do this thing for 90 minutes, roundabout. We'll take a break here or there, but I'm planning on 90 minutes. And here's what we're going to be covering. I'm going to be going through the 5 key sales management strategies, and this is just a broad overview of the 5 key sales management strategies you must know if you are going to be effective in leading a sales team and really getting the results that you're looking for. Then we're going to be looking at, and by the way, there's going to be heaps of other stuff thrown in, but the other key thing we're going to be looking at is what is the number one sales management objective required for you to achieve your sales numbers consistently. So what do you have to do on a consistent basis if you want to be successful? And by successful, I mean being able to bring in sales consistently through your team. So one of the things we do know is that anyone can have a good month, but it's not really about the month. Often it's more about it's about the consistency. So how do we even out those hills and valleys? How do we maintain, and how do we get people to perform regularly, month in, month out? And so I'm going to be showing you what the number one thing that you as the sales leader need to do in order to accomplish that. Then the next thing we're going to look at is I'm actually going to cover with you what we call the sales revenue formula. And this is a very, very powerful formula that if you will take it and print it off and put it up on your wall, and follow it, this is how you achieve your sales numbers. All right. And then finally today, I guess we're going to be looking at the 5 steps for driving sales. Now, folks, this particular methodology that I'm going to be sharing with you it's a really, really simple process, but simple is not necessarily easy, as we'll find out. And while I've shared this particular issue or this particular procedure with at this stage probably be thousands of sales managers worldwide. Many have adopted it and use it all the time, consistently, month in, month out, and there's no deviation. And lo and behold, their results have been stellar. Others have kind of done it a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit ad hoc, and so guess what? Their results as well are reflected in that ad hocness. So I'm going to give you the the five-step process, and hopefully then you guys can weigh it up for yourselves how you want to apply it to your management of your sales team. And then just by the way, I'm going to throw in a little bit extra, something that we call the rapid roadblock or objection removal technique. So this technique we teach in the Sales Coach Academy for when you're looking and you've come up with a plan for your people, and they're going to now go and implement it, and they say, yes, but I don't have this, or I don't have this. This is for when they bring all the excuses to the table. This is a great technique for you to actually flip it on its head and actually turn the excuse into a powerful objective. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So that's pretty much what we're going to be on about. And I guess before we get going, let me just make sure that you guys, are you ready to learn? So are you in learning mode? I want you to imagine just for a moment that instead of being on this webinar, I want you to imagine that you came to my office here in St. Leonard's in Sydney. This was a breakfast meeting, and we'd fed you breakfast, and now you got your pen out. Excuse me a minute. You've got your pen out, and you're ready. You're ready to go. You're ready to learn. And so whether you're using a pen and paper, whether you're using a notebook, whether you're using a tablet, folks, this is going to be a learning session. So I want you to take good notes. I'm also going to put you through some exercises as we go through the workshop, give you some things to think about, things to do. And then I'm hoping that depending on time, we'll be able to take questions and from you guys so that I can give you some even more detail as fits you and your particular situation. Okay, so with that in mind, I might just start out by asking you guys a question. If you just go to your question box, and if you just type in there, here's my question for you. What is when it comes to managing your sales team to get results? Okay, so, and when I say results, I'm talking about consistency. So month in, month out, they're delivering. When it comes to your team delivering results and you managing that team, what's your biggest frustration? What really, what bugs you? What really irritates you? What keeps you up at night when it comes to your team? If you just want to just fill in the little question box or the chat box and just send me through, and I can just have a look and see what some of you guys, what's bothering some of you guys. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of you are talking about inconsistency. The flash in the pan. Yeah. Motivation. How do we keep our team motivated? Yeah, big one, big one. How do we get them to close more sales? Yeah, it's closing sales. That's frustrating. What do we got here? You're in a market where, hey, nobody's buying. Okay, you're in a declining market. That is frustrating. Being able to drive the activity and grow the pipeline. One of the things we find talking about pipelines is that so many of our pipelines are actually inaccurate. Salespeople fill the pipeline up with just rubbish because they feel they've got to show something. but when you look at it, it's just junk, and it's just clutter. So hopefully we will hopefully we'll even get an opportunity today to go through some of that and show you what you can do with it. Yeah, motivation. Yeah. Pipeline traction. Yeah, big one. It kind of seems to be coming through. Okay, so keep those answers coming through. Skills deficit. Yeah, keep them coming through. That's fantastic. That really helps me to get a sense of where I should be headed today. All right. So with that in mind, let's just dive straight in. I wanted just to give you a little bit of background, and this is just to, I guess, as I always say, why am I even qualified to be in front of you today? And most of you are familiar with me. Most of you read my blog or you get my emails. But I've also noticed that there's a whole lot of new folks on board. So obviously you've come through somebody else that suggested you be here today. So just a real quick background. My last corporate role, I was a GM HR for a very large national retailer, and I left there and started off my own online learning or online training program, which we developed and we went out and sold. I then sold my partnership in that business and went out into the consulting world and spent a number of years doing sales training. So while I started off doing HR consulting, my passion had always been around sales. So I just kind of find myself doing more and more sales training. And the more I did sales training and the busier I got, there seemed to be a never-ending demand for come out and train our people how to sell. And pretty soon I was running around the country doing the 2-day workshops here and there. And I thought that this was great. The feedback was terrific. Mind you, I wasn't getting that many referrals, but the feedback on the day was fantastic. And here's the interest. This is where it gets interesting. We picked up a piece of work with one of the big 4 banks here in Australia. And I don't say they gave us a blank check, but it was pretty close. And what that allowed us to do was to really do everything possible. We gave them the best training program. It was customized. We brought in some of the best facilitators, the best trainers. We profiled these people before they went in. We knew their personalities. You name it, we did it. And we had this, it was a 3-phase program. And after the phase 1, we went back to the sales leadership table and we're looking at, okay, now we need to roll out phase 2. And they pulled the pin. Now, folks, I don't know about you, but I know when, certainly, and even today, what most salespeople do when you get a really good one on the line, we're already calculating our commission way before we've even closed the sale. And this was a huge, big contract that we'd already, we'd signed them up. And while we hadn't completed it, it was a lot of money. And in my mind, and on my credit cards, I'd already spent a lot of that money. And they pulled the pin. Well, when you lose something as big as that, you've got to step back and say, well, hold on a minute, what's wrong with this picture? And I start to reflect and start to look and say, well, hold on a minute. Does sales training per se, does it work? Why doesn't it deliver the results that everyone is hoping for? And so we did a lot of research. And finally, what we came up with was, in fact, that the biggest factor impacting salespeople happens to be the sales manager. Interesting. And then what we did, we found some more research, and what we discovered was that, hold on a minute, 89% of all sales managers have never actually been formally trained in their role. So how did they do what they do? Well, here's what we know. Most sales managers, somehow they get into the role. Either they were really good salespeople, and it's their time, they get tapped on the shoulder, and they're moving to sales management. And literally, one day they're in sales, the next day they're in management, which is a completely new set of skills. The other thing that happens is many times sales management comes from other parts of the business. So operational managers will sometimes step into the role of sales management. And so what you find is you've got a lot of dysfunction, people using old systems or systems that they learned from other people who were equally as dysfunctional because they learned them from other people who hadn't really studied or learned what it takes to actually manage salespeople. And so there's a lot of dysfunction in terms of sales management. And from there, what I guess to put all the research together, we came up, and that's when I wrote the book, Bulletproof Your Sales Team. And Bulletproof Your Sales Team really talks about the 5 key strategies that a sales manager must go through or must become proficient in if they ever want to achieve consistency. And so the first skill is really what we call sales performance coaching. We know that the world's best sales managers coach their salespeople one-on-one on a consistent basis, and they get consistent results. The second area was sales planning. Now, interestingly enough, and even today, we go into sales organizations and we say, okay, well, let's have a look at your sales plan. And most sales plans are numbers. But here's what we know. We know that a number is not a plan. A number is just a number. And so we know that a plan has a who, has a what, has a when, has resources attached to that. And so what we found was that sales managers who had really strong sales plans for their people delivered more consistent sales results. The next piece of the puzzle we discovered was this thing called sales process. Now, interestingly, a point about sales process, when you think of any other part of the business, whether it be finance, IT, HR, it's full of processes. To run a big organization, you need process. And yet, when it comes to sales, what happens is most organizations, if you have 10 salespeople, you've got 10 different sales processes. Well, all the research points to those organizations that invest the time and the effort to develop a sales process that works for them, for their market, selling to their customers the way that their customers like to buy, and tweaking and dialing that process, those organizations outperform the rest by a handsome mile. So here's what was interesting. We found that managers who coached their salespeople to a really strong sales plan and that their salespeople had a strong sales process, only then do those sales managers then start to work on skills. Why? Because if a salesperson has a plan and they're following a strong recipe, they've got a good process, then yes, can we improve their skills? Sure. But you know what? Skills is one of the hardest things to actually get people to really grasp. Why? Because you're asking people to change behavior. I'm going to give you an example, right? And we've all had this. We've all been in a situation where we've gone to sales training and we've taught our people the need to ask questions. And there's some brilliant sales training programs out there, all fundamentally driven around quality diagnosis, being able to understand the customer, understand their need. And so you just had 2 days worth of learning, questioning, and different sorts of questions and questions that elicit needs, and put the salesperson the very next day out in front of the customer, and the customer says, so, yeah, how can you help me? And immediately what happens? Salesperson goes into sales pitch mode and just starts talking. as opposed to asking. So even though they can learn the skill in a classroom, to actually get that skill integrated takes a behavioral shift. So it's a lot easier if you just put in a process and have people follow processes than actually really work on their behaviors. That's not to say we shouldn't work on their skills and behaviors. That is to say that planning and process should actually come before skills. Because if you've got a good plan and you've got a strong process, many times the skills can actually be taken care of within that. I'll give you an example. When we talk about sales process, we talk about a process gate. In other words, you can't go to step 3 until you've completed everything you need to in step 2. And in step 2, there's a checklist. There's a checklist of items that you must have completed before you move to step 3. So let's say step 2 is all about your research prior to the call. And there's a checklist of all the things that someone has to do in terms of researching the prospect, their business, before they actually make the call. Well, if there's a checklist, you don't have to spend much time teaching them how to do the research. There's a checklist. Either they've gone online, they've done their homework, they've gone onto LinkedIn, they've looked for the client, they understand a little bit about them, they've had a look at the organization's financials, or they haven't. This is what I'm talking about. A process can actually help with skills. All right. And then the final key to this whole puzzle was what we call individual performance. So driving individual performance. How do we motivate individuals? How do we take a person and how do we motivate them? And so typically what we found was that most sales organizations, they have an incentive program. Well, an incentive program typically works for those people who are driven by that sort of incentive. But what we do know is that everybody is driven by different things. We all get turned on by very different things. So an incentive or an incentive program should really be customized to suit an individual. Give an example, working with an organization, and one of their top performers had gone off the boil. This was towards the end of last year. They were having the previous year, she'd just been an absolute, she'd been growing and growing, and she just totally blew all her, everybody out the water. Her numbers were outstanding. And they'd had her up in front of at the sales conference and, given her the rewards and the accolades. And the following year, she was struggling. She was down about 80% of her sales targets. So they asked me to have a chat to her. Anyway, after about 10 minutes, it became pretty obvious. She hated the limelight. And so for her, it was actually getting in front of the group and being praised in front of everybody and having to stand on stage and receive all the accolades and praise. For her, she found that embarrassing. So guess what? She started to underperform. Now, by the way, did she know that consciously? There was a part of her that did, but there was a lot more that we had to uncover through good questioning to understand, okay, this is what was stopping her. And the moment we actually found another way to reward her, it didn't take long before she was back up there. So there's an example of really thinking about driving performance, not as a group necessarily, but driving performance on an individual level. So that's, I guess that was the model we came up with. And as a sales manager, you need to be proficient in those 5 key areas. But the area that I guess we're going to focus in on today is going to be on the sales performance coaching, because the process that I'm going to deliver is actually best managed through the coaching model. So, and I'll work with you and show you more about that in a minute. Here's the one thing that we did find is that most sales managers, when you ask them, how much time do you actually, or rather not, let me just rephrase that. Most sales managers, when you have a look at their diary and say, okay, well, where did you invest your time? Where did you spend your time last week? Most are not spending their time in the right area. So what is the right area? Let's take a look. Well, we know that there is a single objective that every sales manager, no matter what organization they work for, they have. And the best sales managers in the world keep this objective front of mind all the time, and everything in their diary, everything in their organization, in their organizer, in their planner, everything is reflected in this number one objective. You know, the 80-20 principle says that 20% of what we do accounts for 80% of the success that we achieve. So what then is that core 20%? What is that 20% that we should be doing? Where should 80% of our time, where should we invest it? And by the way, if you can't go straight from, you know, if once we look at this, you can't just go from Saul to Paul overnight. You're going to have to grow into this. But best sales managers in the world, this is where they spend their time. Increasing the profitable sales revenue generation of the sales team. Excuse me. Increasing the profitable sales revenue generation of the sales team. Now, think about this. If you, in fact, here's an exercise I'd like you to do right now. Just stop what you're doing, pull out your planner from last week, your organizer, your diary, what have you. Just take a minute and just pull that out. Okay? So get that out in front of you, and let's just take a look at that. All right, now, I want you to go through your planner from last week and just take a pen or a pencil, and I want you just to tick everything that you did last week that is reflected in increasing the profitable sales revenue generation of the sales team. So if you actually were doing something specifically that increased the profitable sales revenue generation of the sales team, then give it a tick. So in other words, if you were out there filling out a report for your boss, that doesn't count because that didn't have a direct impact on you increasing the profitable sales revenue generation of the team. Okay. On the other hand, if you spent a day out in the field with somebody, well, that would increase the profitable sales revenue generation of the team. If you spent an hour or two analyzing sales in a particular region, okay, ask yourself the question, was that an activity that would enhance the profitable sales revenue generation of the team? So just do that exercise now and just get a sense of where you're currently investing your time. And then I'll get you just in the chat box, just type in some percentages. What sort of percentage of your time last week was invested in increasing the profitable sales revenue generation of the team? Wow, look at that, 30%. 16%, wow, okay. 50%, okay. 60%, very good. 40, 30, 20, okay. So there you go. So isn't this interesting? The number one thing that we actually paid for, we're not doing. We're investing our time doing other people's work, doing other things. Interesting question you should have asked yourself here. What is the biggest value that you bring to your organization? What's the biggest value that you bring to your role? And once you know what that value is, then that's what you should be bringing. There's where you should be investing a good portion of your time. Because if you're not, this is where you yourself are unproductive. Okay, so we know that one of the key areas that that contributes to increasing the profitable sales revenue generation of the sales team is sales performance coaching. Folks, you know, I've been on this bandwagon now for a while in terms of sales managers coaching their salespeople. One of the things we do with the Sales Coach Academy is when we're out there marketing, we show or we do a workshop. We always show just like a 2 or 3 minute video, really, I guess, demonstrating or proving the case for coaching salespeople. And I'm actually going to just show you a snippet of that video right now. But before I do, just think about it this way. Do you need permission to coach your salespeople? Do you, other than skills, which, yes, okay, one could argue you could improve. You don't need permission from the boss. You don't need a policy or procedure. You don't need anybody to tell you whether you should or you shouldn't. You don't even need a budget for this. Any sales manager at any time can start the process of coaching their salespeople. So, and we do know that this is the most effective way to change behavior. And I'll show you a definition of sales performance coaching in just a minute. But this is the key. This is really where the rubber meets the road. This is how you translate ideas. This is how you translate goals into action through the process of coaching your people. It's the one thing, folks, that we know really works. So let me show you the facts. Let me show you some proof. So I'll just run this short video for you. The power of this intervention by overwhelming statistical data. So here are the results of a number of very famous studies conducted on the impact of coaching in the workplace. So proof number one. There was a study conducted by the Corporate Executive Board which actually measured improved sales team performance up to 19%. And so this strategy then became known as the 19% factor. And in fact, in 2007, the Corporate Executive Board completed a follow-up survey whereby they found that managers whose reps received more than 3 hours of coaching every month performed at 107% of goal. Now, the data is actually striking because it explains that there was a 17% performance difference between those sales reps that were coached and those that weren't coached. The research went on to prove that coaching actually makes the difference between reps making or not making their goal. The research actually summarized all the quantitative data and stated that as far as the Corporate Executive Board is concerned, they have found no other driver that can so significantly raise the engagement and the bottom line results of sales reps. And unfortunately, it went on to say that the majority of sales managers are ill-equipped to lead the selling effort because they lack the most important driver of effectiveness, that being a great sales rep coach. The second proof I want to offer is the famous Executive Coaching Impact Study, which was conducted by the Manchester Consulting Group. And this study found that the average return on investment on executive coaching was over 500%. Productivity increased by 53%. Relationships with clients improved by 37%. And bottom line profitability grew by 22%. Now, the third proof that I'm going to be showing you is a well-known study that was done by the Metrics Global Organization. And this was a study of coaching in the workplace, which showed an increased bottom line profitability, again by 22%. Proof number 4. There was a study done by Triad Performance Technologies, Inc. out of Chicago. And they conducted an evaluation of 67 regional and district sales managers' profit performance both before and after a coaching intervention. And they conservatively estimated that the profitability impact from this intervention was in excess of $2 million. Now, the study showed that with a focused coaching program, there was a 77% improved relationship with the sales manager's direct reports. 53% of the managers that went through the program reported being more productive, and 67% of them reported improved teamwork. The study also showed that 61% of the managers that went through the intervention reported improved job satisfaction. And these are just really a small representation of the impact that coaching can have on your sales team. And all that being said, the latest data from CSO Insights, their latest sales management study, found that sales performance coaching increased win rates by 18% and reduced sales cycle time by 32%, as well as improving sales margins by up to 7 full points. And so when you look at these sorts of numbers, it's pretty easy to see why the top sales teams in the world make sales performance coaching the number one focus of their sales management effort. Okay. Now, sorry, hold on, guys. Okay. Folks, if you want more data proving this point, I actually wrote a white paper on, well, a number of actually white papers, which you can actually find at salescoachacademy.com, free downloads, and yeah, pick them up. It's just, there is such a plethora of information out there that tells us that coaching is the number one skill that a sales manager must have if they really want to drive sales results through a team. But hey, you don't have to be, you don't even have to read the white papers to know it. Just if you just come into my common sense corner for a moment, okay, and you take any sales, any sports professional, they all have coaches. Why? Because, it's like, why does Roger Federer need a coach? Does he really need a coach to teach him how to play tennis? No, not at all. It's not about the teaching him how to play tennis. It's about, first of all, refining those little areas that get out of whack from time to time. But also a lot of it's a mental game. So helping them with that mental game. And so while you yourself might have players on your team who have been around for, 10, 15 years, who know it all, they can sell themselves in and out of a brown paper bag, they're just great. They also need coaching because coaching will pull them back on track. One of the things I really appreciate about you guys being on the line is, on this webinar, is the fact that you are looking to get the information that's going to help you. If you don't get the information, well, getting the information is one thing. So we can learn stuff. As the late Stephen Covey would say, to know and to not yet do is to not yet know. Because we really learn by doing. And what a sales coach does is the sales coach really helps the individual and holds them accountable to doing what they've said they're going to do. So with that in mind, I'm going to give you the formula for increasing revenue. And what you'll see about this formula is that each piece of the puzzle can be impacted with sales coaching as the tool. So let's take a look. So the formula is like this. Revenue at margin equals P multiplied by Q multiplied by M. So I'll demystify this in a minute. Well, I don't know if any of you have read the book. It's a terrific book by Skip Miller. It's called Proactive Sales Management. I think it's one of the best sales management books on the ever written, actually. That, and there's a new one called Cracking the Sales Management Code. But excuse me. But Skip, in his book, had this really, really terrific formula. And what he says is that revenue equals F times C, F being frequency and C being competency. So revenue, the more frequencies, the more activity you're out there doing, multiplied by the competency, the more you, the better off they are doing those activities, the more you'll increase revenue. And so the formula that I developed really, I guess, is I'm kind of standing on a skip's shoulders here, and just took it to a different level of, or a different level of abstraction here. So what I'm saying is revenue at margin, because let's face it, folks, in tough markets or not tough markets, we all are looking for the best margin we can get. And what we're saying is that revenue at margin equals productivity multiplied by quality multiplied by motivation. So first of all, let's take quality. Let's take productivity. What do we mean by productivity? Now, again, if you go onto my blog, I've written a whole, I think it was 3 series that I wrote for the Sales Management Association on the 3 ways that you can increase sales productivity. This is essential. Productivity is not just about them being out there doing more stuff. Yes, if we could just get them out there doing more stuff. I mean, can you imagine? Let's run this through the formula. Imagine you were able to coach your people, okay, and you're sitting down with them, you're able to coach them to give 10% more productivity. Just 10% more, that's all. Do you think your people, every one of your people, could squeeze an extra 10% productivity? So when I'm talking about productivity, this is time in front of the customer as an example. So how much time do your people spend doing paperwork or in the office doing administration, etc.? Okay, if you could just go through their diary and find 10% and make them just 10% more productive, what sort of impact would that have on your business as a whole? So productivity. But then what about quality? So what if you could improve the quality of the interactions? You change the way they say things. You get them to ask more questions instead of them just answering the question. When a customer asks them a question, they answer a question with a question, etc., etc. These are things where we tweak what it is they're actually doing. Could you improve the capability? Could you improve the quality of the people's interactions? Could you improve the quality of their emails? Could you improve the quality of their proposals? The quality of the interactions with the customer, could you improve that by 10%? And what about the last one, motivation? Folks, why do some salespeople get up at 7 o'clock in the morning and, or actually, dare I say, why do some salespeople see their first customer at 7 o'clock in the morning and their last customer at 6 o'clock that evening? And some people haven't even got out of bed by 8 o'clock. Okay, motivation. Why do some salespeople hit their target in 2 weeks before the end of the month and just pull back and just stop, slow down? Okay, I can take the rest of the month off. Whereas some hit their target and just keep on going. It comes down to motivation. So could you improve the motivation of your people by just 10%? Well, look at the impact of that. If you could improve the motivation of your people by 10%, the quality of what they do by 10%, and the productivity by 10%, look at the huge impact that would have on your revenue and your margin. These 3 areas, productivity, quality, and motivation, can all be directly impacted with coaching. That's why I love this formula so much, because every manager, no matter whether you're a good manager, a bad manager, new manager, you don't have money to spend, everyone can go and start to coach this formula. You can go and analyze your people's productivity. You can start to take a look at the quality of their work. You can figure out a way to understand what drives them and what motivates them, and just tweak that a little bit. And if you just did that, this alone can really, really start to move your sales forward. So I'm now going to share with you the sales process. And the process that we're going to be using for coaching. This was the process that my coach actually asked me to go out to the marketplace and just share, because we know it works, it's powerful, and it can have a huge impact on many, many businesses. Now, while it's a simple 5-step process for driving sales, here's what we know. We know that simple isn't easy. Just because it's simple doesn't necessarily make it easy, okay? And I found that because I've taught this to a lot of people, and they'll go, well, it's easy enough. Well, it sounds like it's easy, and I'm just looking at some of the names. Many of you guys have been with me, and I've actually worked with some of you actually personally. And you know this, but yet you yourselves are still not doing it because it's not easy. It's simple, but not easy. Because easy isn't simple. And by the way, simple is not simplistic. Okay, this is not a simplistic formula either. It actually is really hard to make things simple. It takes a lot of thought, creativity to take all the complexity and the data and convert that into something simple. It's very complicated to make things easy, you know. Let's just take electricity. That's a complicated process. But for us, it's simple. You just turn on the light. Folks, simple takes discipline. It means you've actually got to keep working at it. Simple takes skill, and it takes practice. So it's ongoing. It doesn't end. You've just got to keep at it. The process, by the way, I'll give you, will work whether you are good or lousy. It doesn't matter. It's going to work anyway. Okay? The better you become at the process, the better your results are going to be. Because while it's simple, it's not easy. It takes skill, it takes practice. And if you look at any professional, they make the easy look so simple. Why? Because they've spent years at it. People want to just be able to get into sales in week 1 and suddenly perform. How long does it take to really get good at selling? It can take years. Okay, so here's the definition that I've coined as the role of a sales performance coach. The sales performance coach holds the salesperson accountable for changing those behaviors that they want to change to get the results that they want to get. So what results do they want to get? Well, obviously they want to hit their sales targets. They want to achieve their bonuses, their commissions, or what have you. Okay? And the sales performance coach holds them accountable. Folks, this is the key word here. If you take a look at most analysis of sales managers, will show that sales management do not hold their people accountable to a result. And the good news is that what we're saying with coaching is that we're holding salespeople accountable to change the behaviors that are going to get the results they want. So let's dive in, and I'll give you this 5-step process. So step number 1, you've got to set mutually agreeable expectations and SMART goals. So establishing mutual expectations and goals, let's talk about the relationship you have with your salespeople. Many of you have a boss-employee relationship. Many of you have a friend relationship. Some of you will have an associate relationship. The most effective relationship you could have with one of your salespeople is one of partnership. I mean, think about it. You are in partnership to get a result. If you guys were in partnership, if you were in partnership to get the result, and you'd both put some skin in the game, you're both working towards the result, what would change? If you were looking at your relationship as a partnership, what would change? Your expectations would change. The way you dealt with those people would change. The way they dealt with you would change. By the way, partnership is it's not just about equality. It's about expectation. If you go into partnership with somebody, and let's say you say, all right, I'll pick up the sales part of the business, and you pick up the finance and admin. And now you sit down at the end of the month and you say, okay, well, show me where's the business at financially? And they say, well, I haven't had time to do the books. Okay, then they're not holding up their side of the partnership. And this is really when you can start to look at your relationship with your salespeople as one of partnership. This is where things really begin to change. This is where you really start to grow the relationship, and you develop trust and and the confidentiality between the two of you. This is where things really start to shift. So here's a question for you. Beyond the job description, what are your expectations of your people? You know, when we put people through the Sales Coach Academy, one of the first lessons that they go through is you've got to learn to set good, strong expectations. And expectations, again, are not job descriptions. It's not the number. These are your expectations of your people. So let me give you an example. An expectation of yours might be something like, I expect that if you and I have a meeting at a certain time, that you show up on time. That might be an expectation of yours. Okay? And it might really irritate you when people come late. So and no, it might just be a small thing, but one of your expectations is that when you set a time, you stick to that time. Now that's not in the job description, but that's one of your expectations. Okay, and my question to you is: other than the subtle messages you've given them to let them know the behavior is unacceptable, do they know it's one of your expectations? What really do you expect? What do you expect of your people? And what do they expect of you? So here's what I want you to do right now. We're going to do an exercise. Okay? I want you right now to take out a pen and paper, and I want you just to write out a list of, I don't know, 10, 20, however many you come up with, of things you expect of your people. What are, just brains, whatever they are, just write them down. What do you expect of your salespeople? Just take a moment and write them down. Pull out a piece of paper and write down the list of what you expect of your people. I'll give you 5 minutes. Do the exercise. What do you expect of your salespeople? I'll give you another minute. What do you expect of your salespeople? Okay, so look at your list and let me ask you a question. Hand on heart, honesty. Okay, of the things on your list, how many, if I was to pick up the phone right now and call one of your salespeople and say, okay, tell me, what does John or Mary or Bob, what do they expect of you? How many of those ideas or concepts or disciplines on your list would they be able to tell me? How many of them would even know? So what's the lesson here? The lesson is pretty obvious. If they don't know what you expect, how can they possibly deliver on your expectations? Let me ask you a question. Do you know what your boss really expects of you? I mean, really expects of you. Do you know what their expectations are? And the answer is probably no. Why? Because you've never had that discussion. So here's what we know. We know, folks, that what we have to do is we have to have what we call the expectations discussion. You've got to sit down with your people and you've got to have the discussion. This is what I expect. And you, folks, you don't just have the discussion with your people. You've got to have it with your boss as well. You know, back in my corporate days, we used to joke, but it was quite true. You know, who is your number one customer? Your number one customer is your boss. And you don't know what your boss expects of you? Think about that for a moment. It's really critical. It becomes the foundation of your relationship with the people you're working with and the people you're working for is understanding their expectations. And folks, by the way, this just doesn't happen just at work. It happens in our home life as well. I mean, give you a classic example. You know, talk about teacher. You need to, you know, shoemaker. You need to mend your shoes. We recently got a new puppy into the family, and it didn't take long before there was disputes. Shall we put it that way? Okay. Should the puppy be on the couch? Should the puppy not be on the couch? Should the puppy be on the bed? Shouldn't it be on the bed, etc. And I started getting all aggro until I realized, hold on a minute, we've never actually set the expectation in the first place. How should the kids know where this puppy should be? The puppy's cute and gorgeous and cuddly. They just want to take put the puppy in the bed. Now, I'm not saying that the dog shouldn't be in the bed. What I'm saying is we need to make a decision around should the dog be in the bed or not. Let's set up the rules. You know, Anthony Robbins always used to say, you know, most disputes are rule disputes. We don't know what the rules are. So first step is you need to have an expectations discussion with your people. Now, once you've got your expectations, and we're now going to run your coaching, everybody needs to understand what their weekly objectives are. And their weekly objectives come and are granulated from your 90-day sales plan. Folks, and if you don't have a 90-day sales, by the way, why do we talk about a 90-day plan as opposed to a quarterly plan? It's kind of the same thing. The difference is 90 days seems to have a bit more tangibility to it. Okay? But that 90-day or that quarterly plan needs to be chunked down and broken into weekly sales objectives. And again, I'm not telling you anything that many of you don't know. Maybe I'm just reminding you of some of the stuff that you know but have maybe forgotten. Then Your fortnightly plans. These are the tactical actions that are required to drive the pipeline forward. And so we're going to talk more about how we use these tactical plans in just a minute. But remember, folks, a plan itself is not a number. A plan is a who is going to be doing what, by when, and what resources are required. This is a plan. A plan is who is going to be doing what, and when are they going to be doing that by, and what resources do they need. Folks, this comes straight out of the project management handbook. Okay? If we're talking about a plan, you put your project management cap on and you go to work. There's no emotion here. This is just about how we're going to get this thing done. And you've got to get buy-in, and you've got to get them to sign off on what it is they're doing. And then, folks, once you've done it, it's about follow-up, 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 follow-up. You know, you don't have to be a brilliant manager. You really don't. What you have to be is a brilliant follow-upper. I'll never forget, back in my corporate days, there was a lady who was she was unbelievable. She didn't have much of a personality. She was a very, very senior. In fact, she was the senior. She was in charge of administration of all the branches within our organization. And she sat at the executive table, and she was just a powerhouse. But let me tell you why she was such a powerhouse. It wasn't because of her personality, because she was as dry as. It was because the fact that she had a reputation as the follow-up queen. Nothing got through. You know, this is back in the days we would go to a meeting, and at the end of the meeting was finished, and literally within, you hadn't even gotten back to your desk, and there was a copy. This was pre-email, obviously, or we're just getting started with email, but there was a copy of all your actions from the meeting on your desk. Who's going to be doing what by when? And you knew that if there was something you were assigned to do, and the next project meeting was on Friday, and you knew that come Wednesday, you'd be getting a reminder. She would be calling to say, how are you going with what it is we're expecting? And guess what? People would show up with things done. She was a follow-up queen. Follow-up, follow-up, follow-up. Follow-up tends to drive results. And by the way, there's ways of following up where you sound like a nag, and there's other ways of following up which are really effective, but that's another story. Okay, so let's take a look at the second step, which is what we call tactically plan the fortnight ahead. Folks, this is where we're now getting into the meat and potatoes. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to set up fortnightly sessions with each of your salespeople. So here's the deal. If you've got 10 salespeople that report to you, that's one session a day. 5 this week, 5 next week. You've got to be able to find 45 minutes to an hour. You know, if you've got 5 salespeople, do 2 this week, 3 next week. This is imperative. This is a must-do. You've got to do it. Initially, when I wrote the book Bulletproof Your Sales Team, the research showed that you should be meeting with them once a week. But in fact, since then, and that's been 4.5, 5 years, we've worked with a number of companies, and if you will coach your people once a fortnight, that's more than enough. In fact, research from the Sales Executive Council suggests that 3 hours a month is the sweet spot, which is 90 minutes every second week, which is what I'm talking about, once a fortnight. So fortnightly, I want you to tactically plan the fortnight ahead with them. If you ask most salespeople where you headed this week, what have you got on for the next week, most couldn't tell you. When they wake up on a Monday morning, how do they start their week? They go to their email. Let's see what's coming up. Okay, no. That's not for you. You cannot get consistent results like that. You want your people to know exactly where they're going to be, what they're going to be doing over the next fortnight. And so what we do with them is we tactically plan the fortnight ahead with them. So you're going to go see John. Great. What are you going to see John about? Okay. What planning have you done for that meeting, etc., etc. You think every step, every part of the way through. You go through it with them. Tactically plan the fortnight ahead. So when we say tactics, what I mean? Well, a tactic is an action or strategy carefully planned to achieve a specific end. That's a tactic. So it's not just about, well, I'm going to go into my territory and I'm going to go seek customers. It's about setting clear objectives. It's about understanding, okay, if you can't achieve objective A, what's objective B? Understanding, okay, what sort of planning have you done for the meeting? Have you got all your resources lined up? Very important. See, because your tactics come from your 90-day planned objectives. And your 90-day planned objectives come from your quarterly strategic sales review. And your quarterly strategic sales review comes from your annual sales plan. And your annual sales plan comes from your sales budget. So this is how we know what we're supposed to be doing this week or the next 2 weeks. But just knowing, yes, I'm going to, here's my call cycle for the next 2 weeks. These are who I'm going to see. That's that's top line. Let's drill down. Let's go deeper. Let's find out, okay, you say, what are you going to see them about? What's the goal? How are you going to grow that account? Who else do you need to see within the organization? Who haven't you seen for a while? What haven't you showed them? What product are you going to introduce to them, et cetera, et cetera? There's all these questions that need to be answered by the salesperson. This is where sales performance coaching is so powerful. And the key here is these are actionable tactics. This is where you are actioning. These are tactics that can be actioned. This is things that they need to do on the ground. And then the other thing that you do in your fortnightly one-on-one is you unpack the fortnight just gone by. Now, folks, let me just say, in the book Bulletproof Your Sales Team, we actually had it the other way, where you actually unpack the fortnight just gone by and then you tactically plan the fortnight ahead. Truth be told, it doesn't matter which one. It's chicken and egg, right? When you're starting out with someone, you'll probably start by planning. And then as you move forward, you'll start your second or third or fourth sessions by unpacking first. It doesn't make a difference. The key is steps 2 and 3, while they are interchangeable, they are both essential. Unpack the fortnight just gone by. So here you're going to review, okay, what worked, what didn't work. Okay, let's understand, what did you say when you said that? What happened when you did this? What was the response? Folks, this is where a lot of your understanding of their skill sets will come in. And when they've been successful, great, congratulate them. Let's understand what are the behaviors that contributed to those success so we can do them over and over and over again. On the other hand, and folks, let me just stop right here. I've got a gift for you. I said I'd have a gift for you. Here's the gift. I've actually got a live recorded one-on-one session for you. This is real life session where I'm going through just one example of what I'm talking about, where we're actually reviewing, where we're looking at and we're planning our attack on a particular client. This is an existing client. How are we going to get them to re-sign? Okay, it goes for about 20 minutes. It's a very, very powerful audio. It will really help you to understand what I'm talking about here. It'll give you a number of really fantastic ideas of what you can do to really make your own one-on-ones more powerful. Many people have said the challenge is, how do we make our pipelines? How do we get more traction? Well, in this process that I've got on this audio, you'll actually hear that most people give their pipelines a cursory overview. Well, that's not for you. You want to delve in deep, listen to this audio, and it will show you how to do that. So I've made it available for you. If you'll contact my PA, her name is Sam, and you can get her through sam@salescoachacademy.com. And if you let her know that you want the free coaching audio, so free coaching audio, and she'll send that out as MP3 file. You'll have it on your computer, listen to it. It's a really powerful session, but really help you to understand what we need to do when we talk about unpacking or packing the fortnight coming up tactically. So sam@salescoachacademy.com, free coaching audio. Folks, pick it up. It's a powerful gift. It really, this can make all the difference for you. And, the other thing you've got to do is you've got to determine where they messed up. What behaviors contributed to their mistake? Okay. How did they mess it? Where did they go wrong? Your goal here is to look out for what we call the attitudinal or the aptitudinal gap. So attitude is their mental gaps, and aptitude is their capability gaps. The more you start to understand what your people are doing out there, when you start to unpack what they've done, the more you'll understand why you're not getting traction, the more you'll understand why opportunities are sitting in your pipeline and going nowhere. Because, folks, either they don't have the mental attitude required to push it through, or they don't have the aptitude required. And only by one-on-one coaching will you be able to really determine those gaps. And so once you've done that, then you reset, obviously, your tactical action plan. So now it's time to review any potential roadblocks that they might have. And here's what I want to do. This is really cool. Okay. By the way, before you send them out, you've got to ask them, okay, what roadblocks do you have? What do you think will stop you from achieving our tactical objectives over the next fortnight? So I've got here a short training video. This comes from the Sales Coach Academy, and I'm just going to play it for you because it's kind of really cool. It gives you a roadblock breaking technique. So, but for right now, let's to make it relevant, I want you guys just write down 2 or 3 roadblocks that are impacting either your ability to sell or your ability to manage or get consistent results from your people. Just write them down on your notepad. So you're looking at roadblocks. What is roadblocking you right now? Either to sell or to get your people to sell more or faster or achieve margin. Okay, just write 1 or 2 roadblocks. Then I want you to watch the video, and we'll come back to your roadblocks in just a minute. So write them down right now. Okay, so let's watch this video. The technique I want to share with you is really what we call the simple roadblock removal system. Now, this system has really evolved from a training that I did with one of the world's greatest internet marketers, a fellow by the name of Rich Sheffrin. And I've taken his really simple technique and I've applied that technique to the sales performance coaching model as a roadblock removal system. So let's take a look at it. Firstly, what you want to do is you want to list all the roadblocks. So what are all the roadblocks that are standing in the way? Now keep in mind, this is an alternative roadblock breaking technique. So list all the roadblocks, all right? Now once you've listed all the roadblocks, the next thing you want to do is you want to convert those roadblocks into a SMART goal. Now this is where you've got to get clever. So let's, as an example, let's say the roadblock is, I don't have enough leads. And as I recall, we even touched on this example in the previous web clinic. Boss, I don't have enough leads. Then becomes, I need 30 leads every single month. The next one is, I don't have enough time to study my product knowledge. Becomes, I study product knowledge 1 hour a week. And that's pretty much how it works. So we take the objection, if you like, we take the roadblock, and we convert the roadblock into a SMART goal. And then all we have to do is, once it's a goal, we just have to come up with strategies, tactics to solve the goal. We do this anyway. The difference is, what we've done here is we've taken a roadblock, we've converted the roadblock into a SMART goal, and now what we're doing is we're brainstorming solutions to achieve that goal. Well, there you go, right? Okay, so if you take your roadblock right now, and I want you to convert your roadblock into a SMART goal. And folks, hopefully you all know what a SMART goal is. If you don't, just Google it. There are many variations of what a SMART goal is, but your goal needs to be specific, it needs to be measurable, it needs to be achievable, realistic, time-bound, etc. But just take your roadblock and turn it into a SMART goal. Once you've now got it into a SMART goal, which can be a bit tricky, okay, now you can come up with ways that you can solve it. But notice the difference between the way it's written as a SMART goal and the way it's written as a roadblock. See, as a roadblock, it almost comes across as, I can't, it can't, we can't. There's a feeling of failure before you start. It's almost a victim mentality. Whereas a SMART goal, all of a sudden, converts the whole thing over, and now we are back in the driver's seat. Now we can do something with it. So take a moment and just convert your roadblock into a SMART goal. And notice the difference. Notice how you even feel about the SMART goal versus the roadblock. And folks, this is what you do with your salespeople. You convert their roadblocks into SMART goals. Okay? And then finally, step number 5 is you review actions and accountabilities. So this is where we now are coming to the end of our session, and we say, okay, so what are the actions? What are the accountabilities? Who's going to be doing what by when? And this is really where you put your project manager's cap on. This is where you confirm who, what, where, how, resources required. And your job here is to make sure that everybody gets the notes from the session. Now, some people like to take the notes themselves and pass them on to their people. Other people like just their salespeople to make notes themselves and just email it when they're done. But somebody should be taking notes in the session, and everybody needs a copy of the who's going to be doing what by when. It really doesn't have to be more than that. But this then becomes your follow-up tool, so that in 2 weeks' time, when we're now going to unpack how did we go, we've got something to use as a basis for that. So there's your 5 steps, folks. I told you it's simple. First of all, we set mutually agreeable SMART goals. So we set a goal, and then we figure out a tactical plan with them. We plan their fortnight ahead, and then we unpack the fortnight just gone by, and we review any potential roadblocks, and then we set actions and accountabilities. It's not difficult. So, the question is, if it looks simple, right, why isn't it done? I mean, how hard is it to sit down with your people once a fortnight? Let's set the goals for the next, and the goals are there because they should be coming straight out of your 90-day plans. These are the objectives that we need to achieve in the next 2 weeks. Great. Now let's figure out what are the tactical plans that we need to implement in order to accomplish those objectives. Who's going to be doing what, by when, and how are we going to be doing that? Are there going to be any roadblocks that are going to stop us from doing just that? And then finally, let's make sure that we all agree that, yes, you're going to be doing this, you're going to be taking this, you're going to do this research, etc., etc., etc. And there's the plan. When you come back in 2 weeks' time, we're going to unpack and see how well you did. Folks, here's my guarantee. If you will do this consistently for 90 days yourself, 3 months, once a fortnight, working with your people, even if you don't really have that skill, but the skill is just in packing the week, the 2 weeks coming up, and unpacking the 2 weeks that have just gone by. If you do that with your salespeople, watch the type of traction you start to get. You'll start to find out what's really going on in your business. It takes discipline, which is why most people will start and stop. So we have a lot of managers that go through Sales Coach Academy, which is a 3-month program, and the results that they start to get are just blow everybody away. And unless, of course, they then start to go through our phase 2 of the program, which is the next part of the next 3 months, what happens is we come back and we find many of them have stopped the discipline of the fortnightly one-on-ones. Stuff gets in the way. Meetings take priority. Folks, your coaching needs to be a priority. And the other thing that it is, you need to understand it's a practice. It's like, they call yoga a practice. It's you never get there. You're always improving. It's like you're selling. You're always looking for ways to improve what you say and how you say it. And could I have asked a better question? Or what's a better question? What would be a more compelling way of putting my point across? And this is really what we're talking about here with coaching your salespeople. There are many, many books on coaching, many courses on coaching. I happen to think we have a really good course on coaching, on coaching salespeople specifically. But at the end of the day, it's all about practice. You've got to practice, and the best place to practice is by doing it regularly, consistently, once a fortnight. So, folks, I'm just looking at our time. We're pretty much, it's been full on. We've gone now for nearly 90 minutes. I'll just put this up for you again. So there's Sam's email address. If you want to get hold of her, if you have any questions specifically for me, feed it through to Sam, and she can get hold of me. She has, she runs my diary, and I'm more than happy to get you the information that you need or the help that you need. Happy to support you in whichever way I can. We've got just a couple of minutes here. Does anybody have any questions? And if you have, just pop a question into the question box, into the chat box, and let me see if I can answer the question here. Okay. Here's a question from Joe. Joe L. Hi, Joe. Joe, you're asking what the question here is, are there times where you should move a coaching session? I think what you're asking here is, once you set the coaching system or as a priority in your diary, should you move it from time to time? Folks, look, you've got a schedule you need to keep, but here's what happens. If you are running a coaching session for your people, if your people know that every Tuesday morning they're going to be coached, here's the thing. The day you bump their coaching session, that's the day they know you're not serious about it. So certainly for the first 90 days anyway, for the first 3 months of you implementing this as a powerful strategy, I wouldn't be moving. They'd be rocks in your diary. They happen regardless, no matter what. And if you teach your people that these sessions are that important as well, they'll tend to show up for them and be better prepared. So hopefully that answered your question. Okay. How many tactics is reasonable to give a sales rep before they become overwhelmed? Okay, so that's a really, really great question. When we talk about tactics, first of all, we're talking about tactics. So let me give an example maybe which would help you. Let's say we're talking about salesperson A going to visit customer B. They're going to see a customer. This is maybe the first time they've ever met that particular customer. Okay. When we talk about tactics, the tactics are, okay, you're going to go and see this customer B. First of all, what's your objective? Most and often, depending on the individual, but most often I find that the objections are very, very airy-fairy, not very strong at all. So the first thing you want to do is really make sure they've got a strong objective. The other thing you want to find out is, do they have a secondary objective? In other words, okay, if you don't achieve your first one, then what's your secondary objective? So make sure you come out at least with something in the call, okay? And then in order to achieve those objectives, what are all the things you need to get done to achieve them? So I think rather than how many tactics, because tactics will be determined based on, what are we trying to achieve in this particular instance. Maybe rather than unpacking too many examples or packing up too many examples, maybe just use 2 or 3 or 4 depending when you first start out, just to get a sense and get them a feel for, oh, this is how it all works. This is what I need to be thinking through. So hopefully that answered the question. Okay, here's a question from how do I convert a roadblock that there's no CapEx available? Okay, so this obviously is this comes from Peter. Hi, Peter. I'm assuming this is a roadblock from a customer. This is an objection from a customer. We've got no CapEx available to spend. Okay, so you can use this technique as a way of handling objections, but really, if you were to turn that into a SMART goal, it would be how do I get the money that I need to get in order to get the machine, the equipment, whatever it is that I really, really want. Okay, so I don't know the situation, and I don't know whether they're saying I don't have any CapEx available because they're just trying to fob you off. But if they really, really want what it is you're selling, then the question is not there is no CapEx available. The question is, how can I make a business case strong enough so that someone's going to give me the money to get what I need to get? If they really want to get it, what we find about people is if they really want something, people are pretty creative. They'll come up with a way of getting it. So I don't know if that answers your question, Peter, but yeah, it's about converting the goal into a SMART goal. Folks, that's it. We're out of time. There's so many questions here. If I didn't get your question, please send your question through to Sam, and I'll make sure I get you an answer. And if your question, if you want to even have a chat on the phone because your question's a little bit more in depth, just leave me a number. I can get hold of you. We can do it via Skype or what have you. I've thoroughly enjoyed today. As you can hear, I haven't been at my very best in terms of I'm just nursing the end of a virus. But hopefully you found today really worthwhile, and hopefully it's been really valuable for you. I really appreciate you guys coming in from all over the world and investing your time. For some of you, I can now bid you good night. And for the rest of you, for those of you in this time zone, folks, go forth and have just a fantastic day. And I will have a replay of this. So this was recorded, So if you want, I'll send you an email letting you know how you can get hold of the replay. Thanks again for your time, and we look forward to seeing you on our next session when I decide to run it again. Okay, thanks, folks.